When my 2-year-old son pointed at me during family dinner, everyone froze. Mama, why does Daddy tell Aunt Sarah he wants to kiss her special places? The fork slipped from my hand and clattered against my plate. Around our dining room table, 14 pairs of eyes turned toward my 2-year-old son Danny, who was still pointing his chubby finger directly at his father. The silence stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. My husband Jake's face had gone completely white. Across from him, my sister Sarah choked on her wine, red liquid dribbling down her chin onto her cream-colored sweater. My mother's hand flew to her chest, and Jake's parents exchanged horrified glances. What did you just say, sweetie? I asked Danny gently, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. I already knew exactly what he'd said. I'd spent the last 3 days coaching him to repeat those exact words. Daddy tells Aunt Sarah on the phone, Danny continued in that innocent, sing-song voice that only toddlers possess. He says I want to kiss your special places, and then he makes those funny breathing sounds like when he runs fast. Jake's chair scraped against the hardwood as he shot to his feet. Danny's just, kids say the craziest things, you know? He probably heard something on TV or... Sit down, Jacob. My voice cut through his rambling like ice. I'd never called him Jacob before. Always Jake, or honey, or babe. But Jacob felt appropriate now, formal and distant, like he was a stranger I was meeting for the first time. Because in a way, he was. Sarah had gone completely silent, staring down at her untouched plate of my mother's famous pot roast. The same pot roast we'd shared every first Sunday of the month since Jake and I got married 4 years ago. The same dinner table where Sarah had been my maid of honor, where we'd announced my pregnancy, where we'd celebrated Danny's first words. Emma, maybe we should talk about this privately, Jake's mother, Linda, suggested softly. She'd always liked me, called me the daughter she never had. The pain in her eyes made my chest tighten. No. I folded my hands in my lap to stop them from shaking. I think this is exactly where we need to talk about it. Danny, can you tell everyone when you heard Daddy say those words? My brilliant little boy tilted his head thoughtfully. Yesterday. When you let me answer your phone in the kitchen. Daddy was talking, but it wasn't to you because you were in the bathroom. The phone call. Jake had been calling my number at 2:47 p.m. yesterday, expecting me to be at my Tuesday yoga class like I had been every week for the past 8 months. Except I'd skipped class with a headache and was home when my phone rang in the kitchen. Danny had grabbed it before I could stop him, pressing the speaker button like he always did because he loved hearing his daddy's voice. Only it hadn't been meant for either of us. My father cleared his throat roughly. Sarah. His voice carried that tone he'd used when we were teenagers caught sneaking out. Sarah, look at me. But Sarah was already pushing back from the table, tears streaming down her face. I can't, I'm sorry, I can't do this. You can't do what, exactly? I asked, my voice steady despite the tornado of rage and heartbreak spinning in my chest. You can't explain to our family why my son knows intimate details about your conversations with my husband? Sarah's shoulders shook as she stood frozen behind her chair, mascara creating dark tracks down her cheeks. But it was Jake who broke first. Fine. He slammed his palm against the table, making the wine glasses jump. Fine. You want to do this here? In front of everyone? Sarah and I, we've been seeing each other. My mother gasped audibly. Jacob, no. Please tell me you're not saying what I think you're saying. 3 months. The words tumbled out of Jake like he'd been holding them back behind a dam. It started 3 months ago when Emma was working those late shifts at the hospital and I was watching Danny Moore. Sarah came over to help one night and... And what? My father's voice was deadly quiet. Dad had walked me down the aisle. He taught Jake how to grill the perfect steak last summer. They'd bonded over Sunday football games and terrible dad jokes. You decided to betray my daughter under her own roof? Jake's hands were shaking now too. It wasn't supposed to happen. We never meant for Danny to find out? I interrupted. Or for me to find out? Because I've known for exactly 72 hours, Jake. Since Sunday night when I found the hotel receipt in your gym bag. The Marriott downtown, room 412, checked in at 11:30 a.m. while I thought you were at your brother's helping him move. Sarah finally lifted her head, and I saw something that made my blood freeze. Not just guilt. Not just shame. There was defiance there too. You checked his gym bag? She asked, her voice barely a whisper but somehow audible in the deadly silence. Emma, that's an invasion of privacy. The audacity hit me like a physical blow. Invasion of privacy? You're sleeping with my husband and you're talking to me about privacy? Sarah Michelle Rodriguez, my mother's voice cracked like a whip. Do not even think about turning this around on your sister. But Sarah was gaining momentum now, standing straighter. You want to know the truth? Fine. Jake's been unhappy for months, Emma. Months. You're never home, you're always exhausted from work, and when you are here, you're distracted. We didn't plan this, but we connected, and... Connected? I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. Is that what you call sneaking around behind my back? Is that what you call the text message I found on his phone Tuesday morning? The one where you told him you couldn't wait to feel him inside you again? Jake's father, Robert, made a strangled noise and pushed away from the table. I think Linda and I should take Danny to the other room. This isn't appropriate for... No. My voice stopped him cold. Danny stays. This is his family too, and he deserves to understand why everything's about to change. Danny, oblivious to the nuclear explosion happening around him, was methodically arranging his peas into little rows on his plate. My beautiful, innocent boy who loved both his daddy and his Aunt Sarah with his whole heart. There's more, I said, reaching into my purse and pulling out a printed email. Jake, would you like to tell everyone about the apartment you put a deposit on last week? The one on Maple Street? Or should I read them the lease application where you listed Sarah as your co-tenant? The silence that followed was deafening. Even Danny looked up from his peas, sensing the shift in the room's energy. Jake's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Emma, how did you get that? Your email password is still Danny's birthday, genius. Sarah let out a sound somewhere between a sob and a laugh. Of course you went through everything. God, Emma, you're like a detective. This is exactly what Jake was talking about. You're controlling and obsessive, Anne. I'm obsessive? I felt something snap inside my chest. I found one hotel receipt by accident and discovered my entire life was a lie. So yes, Sarah, I did some digging. And you know what else I found? I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a screenshot. Your joint savings account. The one you opened at First National on October 15th, current balance, $23,847. Jake, I'm curious, is that the money from your inheritance? The one your grandmother left you that was supposed to go toward Danny's college fund? Jake's face crumpled. Emma, please. Or maybe it's from the life insurance policy you cashed out last month. The one worth $30,000 that was supposed to protect Danny and me if something happened to you. My voice was getting louder now, 3 weeks of suppressed fury finally breaking free. But I guess we don't need protection from you dying, do we? We need protection from you living. Jesus Christ, Jake. Robert's voice was hoarse. Tell me you didn't cash out your life insurance. I can pay it back, Jake stammered. Once we get settled, I can. Settled where? My father demanded. In this apartment you've been planning behind Emma's back? Danny suddenly piped up, completely oblivious to the chaos around him. Are we moving, Daddy? I don't want to leave my room. My nightlight is plugged in just right. The innocence in his voice broke something in Linda. She started crying, quiet, dignified tears that somehow hurt worse than Sarah's dramatic sobs. There's one more thing, I said, my voice steadier now. Jake, do you want to tell everyone about the fertility clinic appointment? The one you took Sarah to on November 3rd? The blood drained from every face at the table. Sarah went completely white. What? My mother whispered. Dr. Morrison's office called Tuesday afternoon, I continued. Apparently Sarah missed her follow-up appointment for the fertility consultation. They wanted to reschedule. I looked directly at my sister. Were you planning to tell me you were trying to get pregnant with my husband's baby? Or was I supposed to find out about that at another family dinner? Sarah's knees buckled and she collapsed back into her chair. It's not, we weren't. You weren't what? The appointment was for a fertility consultation for a couple planning to conceive. The paperwork lists Jacob Rodriguez as the prospective father. I set my phone down carefully. My married husband. Planning a family. With my sister. Oh my God, Linda whispered. Oh my God, Sarah, what have you done? But it was my mother who delivered the killing blow. Her voice, when it came, was colder than I'd ever heard it. Get out. Sarah looked up, mascara streaking her cheeks. Mom, I can explain. Get out of my house. Both of you. Right now. Jake started toward Danny. I need to talk to my son. Don't. I stepped between them. You don't get to confuse him more than you already have. You don't get to make promises you won't keep or explanations he won't understand. He's my son too, Emma. Is he? The question hung in the air like poison. Because the man I thought was Danny's father would never have stolen money from his college fund to play house with my sister. The man I married would never have taken another woman to plan a pregnancy while I was working 60-hour weeks to support our family. Jake's face went gray. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't know who you are anymore. I'm saying the Jake I married died somewhere between that first hotel room and the fertility clinic. And I'm not letting this stranger near my son until I figure out what comes next. Robert stood slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. Come on, Jacob. Linda, get your purse. We're leaving. But Jake didn't move. Instead, he turned to face me with something I'd never seen in his eyes before, pure desperation mixed with rage. You think you're so smart, don't you? His voice was shaking. Going through my things, tracking down every detail like some kind of a forensic accountant. But you want to know what you missed, Emma? You want to know what your little investigation didn't uncover? A chill ran down my spine. Jake, don't. The house, he said, and Sarah's head snapped up from where she'd been sobbing into her hands. Tell her about the house, Sarah. Shut up, Sarah hissed. Just shut up, Jake. But Jake was past the point of no return, his face flushed and his hands clenched into fists. No, she wants the whole truth? Let's give her the whole truth. My father stood up slowly. What house? This house, Jake laughed, but it was a broken sound. This beautiful house that Emma loves so much. The one we've been living in for 4 years, the one where Danny took his first steps, the one with the mortgage payments that are exactly $2,847 a month. My mother's face went pale. Jacob, what are you saying? I'm saying I haven't made a mortgage payment since August. His voice was getting louder, more manic. I'm saying we got the foreclosure notice 6 weeks ago. I'm saying Emma's precious little home, the one she's been working 60-hour weeks to maintain, is going to belong to the bank in exactly 17 days. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table so hard my knuckles went white. That's impossible. The payments come out automatically. From an account that's been empty since September, Jake continued, his words coming faster now. You want to know where your husband's been? I haven't been at the gym or at my brother's or even just with Sarah. I've been at the casino, Emma. The Riverside Casino, every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 6 months, trying to win back what I lost. Danny looked up from his peas, finally sensing the shift in energy. Daddy, why are you yelling? How much? My voice came out as barely a whisper. Sarah was shaking her head frantically. Jake, please stop. This isn't how we talked about. How much, Jacob? My father's voice cut through Sarah's pleading. Jake's laugh turned bitter. All of it. The mortgage payments, Danny's college fund, my inheritance from Grandma Ruth, the life insurance money, Emma's savings account. My savings account? I felt like I was falling. My savings account has $43,000 in it. I checked the balance last Friday online. Had, Jake corrected. It had $43,000. Until I transferred it Tuesday morning to cover the debt. The room went completely silent except for the sound of my mother's sharp intake of breath. What debt? Robert's voice was deadly quiet. 67,000, Jake whispered. To some very patient men who are getting less patient every day. Linda stood up abruptly, her chair clattering to the floor. Jacob, tell me you didn't borrow money from loan sharks, he finished for her. And before you ask, no, the apartment deposit isn't about starting a new life with Sarah. It's about having somewhere to hide when they come looking for the rest of what I owe them. Sarah was crying harder now. You told me it was just a few thousand. You said you had it handled. I lied, Jake said simply. I've been lying to everyone for months. The fertility clinic? That wasn't about planning a family, Emma. That was Sarah's idea to give us something to hope for while our whole world burned down around us. Danny, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Go to your room and play with your trucks. Mommy needs to finish talking to the grown-ups. But I didn't finish my piece. Go. Now. Danny slipped down from his booster seat and padded out of the room, his little feet soft on the hardwood. The same hardwood that apparently wouldn't be ours much longer. 17 days, I repeated. 17 days until we lose our home. Unless I come up with $94,000, Jake said. Which, as you've so thoroughly documented, I don't have. My phone buzzed on the table. A text message from an unknown number, asterisk your husband owes us money. We know where you live. We know where you work. We know Danny's daycare schedule. Time to pay up, asterisk. My hand shook as I read the message aloud. The words hung in the air like a death sentence, and I watched the color drain from every face around the table. They know about Danny's daycare, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Little Sprouts Learning Center. They know he goes there Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 4:30. Jake lunged for my phone, but I pulled it back, already screenshotting the message. Don't you dare, I hissed. You destroyed everything else, but you don't get to hide this too. Robert was on his feet, pacing behind his chair. Jacob, who exactly did you borrow from? Names. It doesn't matter. Names. Robert's voice boomed through the dining room. Jake's shoulders sagged. Vincent Castellano. He runs operations out of the back room at Mickey's bar on 5th Street. My blood turned to ice. Everyone in the city knew that name. Vincent Castellano wasn't just a loan shark, he was connected to people who made other people disappear when they didn't pay their debts. Jesus Christ, Jake. My father's voice cracked. Castellano? Are you completely out of your mind? Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. That's why we needed to move fast. Vincent gave Jake until Thanksgiving to come up with a full amount, plus interest. That's next Thursday. 6 days, my mother said hollowly. You have 6 days to come up with nearly $100,000 or they hurt Emma and Danny. Another text buzzed through, asterisk pretty little boy. Would hate for something to happen to such a sweet face, asterisk. The phone slipped from my numb fingers and clattered onto the table. Linda gasped and covered her mouth. That's it. My father was already pulling out his cell phone. I'm calling Detective Morrison. Bill owes me a favor, and this is extortion. No. Jake jumped up, panic flooding his face. Dad, you can't involve the police. Vincent has cops on his payroll. The second we file a report, they'll know, and then. Then what? I stood slowly, my legs unsteady. Then they'll do exactly what they're threatening to do anyway? Emma, please. Sarah reached toward me across the table. We have a plan. Jake's brother Tony knows a guy who can help us disappear. New identities, relocation assistance. Us? The word came out sharp and bitter. There is no us, Sarah. There's my son, who I will protect. There's the husband who destroyed our lives. And there's my sister who helped him do it. But there is no us. My phone rang, cutting through the tension. Unknown number. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering on speaker. Mrs. Rodriguez? The voice was soft, almost polite. This is Vincent. I think we should meet. I have nothing to say to you, I managed. Oh, but I have plenty to say to you. Your husband made promises he can't keep, and now that becomes your problem. I'm a reasonable businessman, Mrs. Rodriguez. I don't like involving families, especially children. But Jake owes me money, and one way or another, I'm going to collect. Jake was frantically shaking his head, drawing his finger across his throat. What do you want? I asked. Tomorrow night. Mickey's bar, 8 p.m. Just you. We'll discuss payment options. Vincent's voice remained eerily calm. And Mrs. Rodriguez? Don't even think about not showing up. I'd hate for little Danny to have an accident at daycare. The line went dead. Robert slammed his fist on the table. That's it. We're taking Danny and leaving town tonight. I'll mortgage my house, liquidate my retirement. $94,000, Dad. I looked around the table at the faces of people who loved me, people who would bankrupt themselves trying to save us. Even if we had the money, what makes you think Vincent would just let us walk away? Jake knows too much about his operation now. We're liabilities. The dining room fell silent except for the sound of my mother's quiet crying. There's something else, Jake whispered. Vincent, he doesn't just want the money anymore. What do you mean he doesn't just want the money? My father's voice was barely controlled. Jake's hands were shaking as he ran them through his hair. Last week, when I couldn't make the payment, Vincent said he had other uses for someone with my skill set. What skill set? Robert demanded. I'm an accountant, Dad. I know how to move money around, make transactions look legitimate, create paper trails that lead nowhere. Jake's voice was getting smaller with each word. Vincent wants me to cook the books for his operation. Permanently. The implications hit me like a sledgehammer. You mean he wants you to launder money? It's not that simple anymore, Emma. Vincent's expanding into new territory, legitimate businesses that need financial management. Auto dealerships, construction companies, restaurants. All fronts for moving drug money, but they need someone who can make it look clean to the IRS. Sarah was staring at Jake in horror. You never told me any of this. Because I hoped I could still find a way out. Jake snapped. I thought if I could just win back enough to cover the debt, or if we could disappear fast enough. But Vincent found out about your plans to run, I said, the pieces clicking together. That's why the threats escalated. Jake nodded miserably. He had someone following me. They know about the apartment Sarah and I looked at. They know about Tony's contact in Phoenix. They know everything. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Vincent's number. Asterisk ask Jake about the Riverside job. Ask him what he already did for me. Asterisk. I held up the phone. What Riverside job, Jake? The color drained completely from his face. Emma, don't. What? Riverside. Job. Linda was looking between us frantically. Jake, what is she talking about? The casino, he whispered. Vincent owns a piece of the Riverside casino. He needed someone to adjust the electronic records for high roller losses. Make it look like certain players lost more than they actually did, so the skimmed money would balance out. My mother's voice was hollow. You've already been laundering money for him. Just once. Jake's voice cracked. It was supposed to be just once, to buy me more time to pay him back. But then he said I was so good at it, why not make it a regular arrangement? Jesus, Jake. Robert slumped back into his chair. How long? 6 weeks. Every Tuesday when Emma thought I was at the gym. Jake looked at me with desperate eyes. I'm so sorry. I never wanted any of this. I needed more time, and Vincent kept offering solutions. Sarah spoke up suddenly. That's not all of it. Everyone turned to stare at her. She was sitting straighter now, tears still streaming but her voice gaining strength. Sarah, shut up, Jake hissed. No. She looked directly at me. Emma, you deserve to know everything. Vincent doesn't just want Jake to work for him. He wants collateral. Insurance that Jake won't try to run or turn him in. What kind of collateral? My father's voice was deadly quiet. Me, Sarah said simply. And you, Emma. Vincent wants both of Jake's women working for him. Sarah at the restaurant he just bought downtown, doing hostess work and keeping track of which customers pay in cash. And Emma. She swallowed hard. Emma at the medical clinic. What medical clinic? Jake's voice was barely a whisper. Vincent's opening a clinic on the south side. Officially, it'll treat work injuries for his construction crews. Unofficially, it needs a nurse who can treat gunshot wounds and overdoses without asking questions or filing reports. The room went completely silent. I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway, the same clock that had marked time through 4 years of what I thought was a happy marriage. You told him I'm a nurse, I said flatly. He already knew. Vincent knows everything about everyone connected to his debtors. He knows you work at General Hospital, he knows your schedule, he knows you have access to medical supplies and prescription pads. Another text arrived, asterisk family meeting going well? Don't forget, 8 p.m. tomorrow. Come alone, or Danny pays the price, asterisk. I looked around the table at my family, what was left of it. My parents, aged 10 years in the past hour. Jake's parents, staring at their son like he was a stranger. Sarah, crying silently. And Jake, the man I'd loved for 6 years, who had just revealed that he'd sold not just our marriage but our lives to a monster. There's one thing Vincent doesn't know, I said quietly. Everyone looked at me. He doesn't know that I'd been recording this entire conversation on my phone. The silence that followed my revelation was deafening. Jake's face went from pale to completely gray. You've been recording this? Sarah's voice came out as a strangled whisper. I held up my phone, showing the voice memo app that had been running for the past 47 minutes. Every word. Jake's confession about the gambling, the money laundering at Riverside Casino, Vincent's threats against Danny, your fertility clinic appointments, all of it. Jake lunged across the table, grabbing for my phone. Emma, you don't understand what you're doing. If Vincent finds out we have evidence. He'll what? Kill us? I pulled the phone back, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Jake, he's already threatening to hurt our son. How exactly does this make things worse? Because now we have leverage, my father said slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. Emma, you brilliant girl. We have Vincent threatening a child on record. That's federal. Robert was nodding, his lawyer instincts kicking in. Extortion, racketeering, conspiracy, Emma, this recording could put Vincent away for decades. But Jake was shaking his head frantically. You don't get it. Vincent has judges in his pocket, cops on payroll. Even if we go to the FBI, someone will tip him off before any arrests happen. And then. He swallowed hard. And then Danny becomes a casualty of war. My phone buzzed. A photo message from Vincent's number, Danny's daycare, taken from across the street. In the corner of the image, I could see a black sedan with tinted windows parked in the loading zone. They're watching him right now, I whispered, showing the photo to the table. Linda gasped and covered her mouth. Another message followed, asterisk nice try with the recording, Mrs. Rodriguez. But my associate has been listening to your family dinner from the van outside. Wave hello to the nice man with the listening equipment, asterisk. My blood turned to ice. Through our dining room window, I could see a white panel van parked across the street that hadn't been there when everyone arrived. The same van that had probably been monitoring our every word for the past hour. He's been listening this whole time, Sarah said, her voice hollow. Vincent knows about the recording. My father stood abruptly, moving toward the window. I'm calling the police. Dad, stop. My voice froze him mid-step. Look at the van. Look at who's driving. Everyone crowded toward the window. Behind the wheel of the white van, clearly visible now, sat Officer Marcus Chen from the local precinct. The same Officer Chen who had given Danny a police badge sticker at the community safety fair last month. The same Chen who Jake had mentioned was always hanging around Mickey's bar after his shifts. Vincent wasn't bluffing about having cops on payroll, Robert said grimly. Jake slumped back into his chair. It's over. Vincent knows we have the recording, he knows we discussed going to the authorities, and he has people watching Danny right now. We're completely trapped. But I was thinking about something else, a detail from earlier that everyone had missed in the chaos of revelations. Sarah, I said suddenly. When you said Vincent wants us to work for him, you mentioned a restaurant downtown. Which restaurant? She looked confused by the question. Bella Notte. That new Italian place on Market Street. Why does it matter? My heart started racing, but not from fear this time. From possibility. Because Bellinate isn't just any restaurant. My friend Katie from nursing school, her husband Detective Bill Morrison, they've been investigating Bellinate for 3 months as part of a federal task force. Robert's head snapped up. What kind of task force? Money laundering. Specifically, they've been trying to get someone inside Vincent's operation to gather evidence. Katie mentioned it last week at book club. They're close to making arrests, but they need someone with access to the financial records. Jake was staring at me like I'd lost my mind. Emma, you can't be thinking what I think you're thinking. Vincent wants me to meet him tomorrow night. He wants to force me into working for his operation. I looked around the table at my family. What if I say yes? Absolutely not, my father said immediately. Emma, that's insane. You can't put yourself in that kind of danger. I'm already in danger, Dad. We all are. But if Detective Morrison's task force needs someone inside Vincent's organization, and Vincent is practically begging me to come work for him. Linda was shaking her head violently. Emma, honey, you're talking about going undercover with organized crime. These aren't just loan sharks. Vincent Castellano has killed people. And he's threatening to kill my son, I shot back. At least this way, Danny has a chance. My phone rang again. Vincent's number. I answered on speaker, my hands surprisingly steady. I trust you enjoyed the photo, Mrs. Rodriguez? Vincent's voice was as calm as before, but there was an edge to it now. And I hope you understand that your little recording session changes nothing. In fact, it makes tomorrow night's conversation even more interesting. What do you want, Vincent? The same thing I wanted an hour ago. You, at Mickey's bar, 8 p.m. tomorrow. But now we'll also discuss your new career in law enforcement cooperation. He chuckled softly. Did you really think I didn't know about Detective Morrison's task force? About your friend Katie's loose tongue at book club? Emma, I've been 3 steps ahead of everyone in this game for 20 years. The line went dead, and I stared at the phone in horror. He knows, Sarah whispered. He knows about the federal investigation. Jake put his head in his hands. Which means Detective Morrison and his whole team are compromised. Vincent's been feeding them information, letting them think they're close to catching him while he stays completely protected. Then Detective Morrison is walking into a trap, my mother said quietly. I looked out the window again. The white van was gone, but Officer Chen's patrol car had taken its place. He was just sitting there, engine running, making sure we all knew we were being watched. Vincent's not trying to avoid the law, I realized aloud. He's trying to control it. And tomorrow night, he's going to offer me a choice, help him destroy the federal task force from the inside, or watch my son disappear. My phone rang at 6:47 a.m. the next morning, jolting me from the 3 hours of sleep I'd managed to get. Unknown number, but not Vincent's. Mrs. Rodriguez? This is Detective Bill Morrison. I believe you know my wife Katie from book club. My heart hammered against my ribs. Detective Morrison. How did you get this number? We need to talk. Immediately. There's been a development in the Castellano case that affects you directly. His voice was tense, official. Can you meet me at Riverside Park in 20 minutes? Come alone, and make sure you're not followed. I looked out my bedroom window. Officer Chen's patrol car was still parked across the street, but a different officer sat behind the wheel now, a heavy-set man I didn't recognize, sipping coffee from a travel mug. Detective, I'm not sure that's safe. Vincent has people watching my house. I know about Officer Chen. And Officer Rodriguez from the night shift, no relation to you, despite the name. And Detective Sarah Kim from the Financial Crimes Unit. Morrison's voice turned grim. Mrs. Rodriguez, we've been investigating Vincent's police connections for 8 months. We know exactly who's compromised and who isn't. Then why haven't you arrested them? Because until last night, we didn't have enough evidence to move without tipping off Vincent's entire network. But your husband's gambling debts and your family meeting changed everything. I sat up straighter, clutching the phone. What do you mean? Vincent made a mistake. He got greedy. Instead of just collecting Jake's debt quietly, he decided to recruit you and your sister for his expanding operation. But what he doesn't know is that we've been monitoring his communications for the past 6 weeks through a federal wiretap. My mouth went dry. You recorded his calls to me? Every threat, every demand, every detail about his plans for you and Danny. Mrs. Rodriguez, Vincent Castellano just handed us a federal case on a silver platter. We have him on extortion, racketeering conspiracy, and threatening violence against a minor. I thought about the recording I'd made during dinner, still saved on my phone. Detective Morrison, there's something you should know. I have additional evidence. I know about your recording from last night. Your neighbor Mrs. Patterson called the police around 9 p.m. reporting suspicious activity, a van with surveillance equipment parked outside your house. When our tech team investigated, we discovered Vincent's people had tapped into your phone line and were monitoring your conversations in real time. The implications hit me like a freight train. So Vincent knows you're onto him. Yes and no. He knows we're investigating, but he doesn't know how much evidence we have or how close we are to moving. Which brings me to why I'm calling. Morrison paused. Mrs. Rodriguez, we want you to keep your appointment with Vincent tonight. Are you insane? I hissed, trying to keep my voice down so I wouldn't wake Danny. He threatened my son. And we're going to arrest him for it. But we need him to incriminate himself on federal charges in a controlled environment where we can guarantee your safety and gather ironclad evidence. I walked to Danny's room and peered through the cracked door. He was sleeping peacefully, clutching his stuffed dinosaur, completely unaware that his entire world was hanging in the balance. What exactly are you asking me to do? Wear a wire. Meet Vincent as planned. Let him make his demands on record, and we'll move in for the arrest. It'll be over by 8:30 p.m., and Vincent will never threaten your family again. And if something goes wrong? If his people realize I'm working with you? Detective Morrison's voice softened slightly. Mrs. Rodriguez, I have a 6-year-old daughter. If someone threatened her the way Vincent threatened Danny, I'd move heaven and earth to stop them. We've been planning this operation for months, and we have contingencies in place. You won't be alone in there. I heard movement downstairs. Jake was awake, probably making coffee and trying to figure out how to face me after last night's revelations. Part of me still couldn't believe the man I'd loved for 6 years had destroyed our entire life with his lies and gambling addiction. There's one more thing, Morrison continued. Jake's cooperation could significantly reduce any charges he might face for the money laundering at Riverside Casino. If he testifies against Vincent and provides evidence about the casino operation, the district attorney is prepared to offer him a plea deal. What kind of plea deal? Community service, financial restitution, mandatory gambling addiction treatment. No jail time, which means Danny keeps his father in his life. I closed my eyes, weighing impossible choices. Trust a federal task force to protect us during a sting operation, or spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders while Vincent controlled every aspect of our existence. Detective Morrison, I said finally, if I do this, if I wear a wire tonight, I need guarantees. Not just about my safety, but about what happens after. Vincent isn't going to disappear quietly, and he has a long reach. Vincent Castellano will be in federal custody by 9 p.m. tonight, along with every corrupt officer on his payroll. His operation will be dismantled completely. Morrison's voice carried absolute conviction. Mrs. Rodriguez, after tonight, you and Danny will be free. Through my bedroom window, I could see the officer in the patrol car talking on his radio, probably reporting that I was awake and moving around the house. I need to think about it, I said. You have until 3 p.m. to decide. After that, we move forward with or without your cooperation, but Vincent will know something's wrong if we suddenly pull surveillance. The call ended, leaving me staring at my phone and wondering how my quiet life as a nurse and mother had turned into a federal case involving organized crime, corrupt police, and the safety of my son hanging in the balance. Downstairs, I could hear Jake talking to someone, probably Sarah, based on the hushed, urgent tone of his voice. It was time to find out what other secrets my husband had been hiding. I crept halfway down the stairs and froze when I heard Jake's voice coming from the kitchen, low and desperate. Told you, Sarah, we can't just disappear now. Vincent has people everywhere, and with the feds breathing down his neck, he's going to want to tie up loose ends. What loose ends? Sarah's voice was sharp with fear. Jake, what aren't you telling me? I pressed myself against the wall, straining to hear every word. The Riverside job wasn't just adjusting records, Jake said. Vincent had me create entire fake identities for high-roller accounts. We're talking about money laundering for drug cartels, Sarah. Millions of dollars moved through fictional players over the past 6 weeks. Jesus Christ, Jake. You said it was just skimming from the casino. I lied, okay? I've been lying about everything because the truth is so much worse. Jake's voice cracked. Vincent doesn't just want Emma to work at his clinic. He wants her to help disappear bodies. Real bodies, Sarah. People who cross Vincent don't just get roughed up, they disappear completely, and he needs a medical professional to make sure there's no evidence left behind. My blood turned to ice. I gripped the banister so hard my knuckles went white. That's why he's so interested in Emma specifically, Jake continued. She has access to medical supplies, she knows how to handle biological evidence, and she has a son he can use as leverage to ensure her cooperation. Sarah was crying now. This is insane. We have to run, Jake. Tonight. Before the meeting. With what money? And go where? Vincent's reach extends way beyond the city limits. Jake's laugh was bitter. Besides, I haven't told you the worst part yet. There's worse? Detective Morrison's task force, Vincent's been feeding them information for months, but not through corrupt cops. Through me. Jake's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Every Tuesday when I went to Riverside, Vincent had me photograph federal surveillance equipment, copy down license plate numbers of unmarked cars, identify which casino employees were actually undercover agents. I felt like I was going to be sick. Jake hadn't just been laundering money, he'd been compromising an active federal investigation. Vincent knows about Morrison's wiretaps, he knows about the planned raid, he knows exactly when and where they're planning to move. Jake paused. Sarah, tonight isn't a negotiation. It's a trap. Vincent's going to kill Emma and frame it on the corrupt cops he's about to expose. Then he disappears while the feds think they've solved the case. My phone buzzed in my hand. A text from Detective Morrison, * change of plans. Vincent's people are moving earlier than expected. We need to meet now. Riverside Park, southeast entrance. Come immediately, *. But something felt wrong. Morrison had called me less than an hour ago saying we had until 3 p.m. to decide. Why the sudden urgency? I crept back upstairs and called Morrison's number. It went straight to voicemail. Another text arrived, * Emma, this is Katie Morrison, Bill's wife. Do not meet anyone claiming to be Bill at Riverside Park. Someone has compromised his phone. He's in federal custody for his own protection. Vincent knows about the wiretapping operation, *. My hands started shaking. The text I'd received wasn't from Detective Morrison at all, it was from Vincent's people, trying to lure me into the open where they could eliminate the threat I represented. I looked out my bedroom window again. The patrol car was gone, replaced by a white Honda Civic with 2 men inside wearing baseball caps and sunglasses. One of them was talking on a phone while watching our house. We were completely surrounded, and Vincent was making his move 12 hours ahead of schedule. I had maybe minutes before they decided to come inside and finish this on their terms rather than waiting for tonight's meeting. Danny was still sleeping in his room, completely vulnerable. Jake was downstairs revealing information that proved he'd been betraying federal agents for weeks. And somewhere in the city, Detective Morrison was either in protective custody or already dead. My phone rang again. This time, I recognized Vincent's voice immediately. Good morning, Emma. I hope you slept well, because today's going to be a very long day. Vincent. I kept my voice steady despite the terror coursing through my veins. You're early. Plans changed when your friend Detective Morrison got a little too curious about my business operations. Did you really think I wouldn't notice federal agents sniffing around Bellinate for 3 months? His laugh was cold. Emma, I've been in this game since before you were born. I don't survive by being reactive, I survive by being proactive. Through my bedroom window, I watched one of the men from the Honda step out and casually lean against a lamppost, positioning himself with a clear view of both our front and back doors. The other remained in the driver's seat, engine running. What do you want, Vincent? Simple. You have exactly 1 hour to gather your son and meet my associates at the location I'm about to text you. No police, no federal agents, no clever recording devices. Just you, Danny, and a willingness to discuss your future employment opportunities in a more controlled environment. And if I refuse? Well, let's see. Your husband Jake is currently sitting at your kitchen table, completely unaware that Mrs. Henderson from next door isn't actually Mrs. Henderson anymore. My people replaced her about an hour ago when the real Mrs. Henderson decided to take an unexpected vacation. Vincent's voice carried casual menace. One phone call from me, and Jake experiences a very unfortunate home invasion. Danny wakes up to find Daddy bleeding on the kitchen floor. My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked toward Danny's room, where I could hear him starting to stir, little sounds that meant he'd be awake within minutes, asking for breakfast and his favorite cartoon. You're bluffing. Killing Jake doesn't get you what you want. No, but it eliminates a liability who knows too much about my Riverside operations while demonstrating exactly how serious I am about your cooperation. Vincent paused. Besides, Emma, widows make much better employees than wives. Less complicated loyalties. A text arrived with an address I recognized, an industrial warehouse district on the south side, 15 minutes from downtown. The same area where 3 bodies had been found over the past year, all connected to organized crime according to news reports. 1 hour, Vincent continued. And Emma? Bring an overnight bag for Danny. Depending on how our conversation goes, you might not be returning home tonight. The line went dead just as I heard Danny's bedroom door creak open. Mommy? His sleepy voice drifted down the hallway. I had a scary dream about monsters. I closed my eyes, trying to compose myself before facing my son. When I opened them again, I noticed something that made my blood freeze. Across the street, parked behind a delivery truck where it hadn't been visible before, sat a black SUV with tinted windows. The same SUV from the photo Vincent had sent yesterday of Danny's daycare. They weren't just watching anymore. They were positioning for extraction. Coming, sweetheart, I called out, forcing normalcy into my voice. But my mind was racing through impossible calculations. 1 hour to somehow get Danny to safety, warn Jake about the fake Mrs. Henderson, and figure out how to survive a meeting with Vincent Castellano without backup from federal agents who were either compromised or eliminated. Downstairs, I could still hear Jake talking to Sarah, completely oblivious to the fact that our neighbors had been replaced by Vincent's people and that armed men were watching our every move. Danny appeared in my doorway, dragging his stuffed dinosaur and rubbing his eyes. Mommy, why are there so many cars outside? Are we having another family dinner? Through the window, I counted at least 6 vehicles that hadn't been there when I'd gone to bed last night. Vincent wasn't taking any chances. He'd surrounded our house with enough people to handle whatever resistance we might offer. No, baby, I whispered, kneeling down to hug Danny close. But we're going to take a little trip today. Just you and me. Because in 57 minutes, we were going to find out exactly what Vincent Castellano had planned for our future. I knelt beside Danny, my mind racing as I tried to figure out how to keep him safe while the clock ticked down. 56 minutes until Vincent expected us at that warehouse, and I still had no idea how to get us out of this alive. Mommy, you're squeezing too tight, Danny whispered against my shoulder. Sorry, sweetheart. I loosened my grip but didn't let go. Through his bedroom window, I could see another vehicle had joined Vincent's surveillance team, a gray van parked at the corner, positioned to block our street if we tried to make a run for it. That's when I remembered something that made my heart skip. Danny's bedroom had a window facing the Hendersons' backyard, where Mrs. Henderson always hung her laundry on Tuesday mornings. But today, the clothesline was empty, and I could see movement through her kitchen window, someone much taller and broader than elderly Mrs. Henderson. Vincent hadn't been bluffing about replacing our neighbor. Danny, I need you to listen very carefully, I whispered, carrying him away from the window. We're going to play a special game today, okay? Like hide and seek, but more important. His eyes brightened with interest. What kind of game? Remember how Daddy taught you about emergency exits? How every room has more than one way out. I set him down gently. Today we're going to use the secret way out of our house. Danny's face scrunched in confusion. The basement window? Exactly. 2 years ago, Jake had installed an egress window in our finished basement as part of a renovation project. It opened directly into the side yard, hidden from street view by Mrs. Patterson's garden shed. If Vincent's people were focused on watching the front and back doors, they might not have noticed that exit. But first, I needed to warn Jake. I crept to the top of the stairs again, listening. Jake was still in the kitchen with Sarah, but their conversation had shifted. We should wake Emma and Danny, Sarah was saying. If we're going to run, we need to do it now, before Vincent's people get suspicious. Emma will never agree to leave without a plan, Jake replied. And honestly, Sarah, after everything I put her through, I don't blame her if she doesn't trust me to protect them. I heard footsteps moving toward the stairway. Jake was coming upstairs. Quickly, I scribbled a note on the back of an envelope from my nightstand, asterisk fake Miss Henderson. Vincent's people everywhere. Taking Danny through basement. Meet US at Mom's house. Trust no one else, asterisk. I folded the note and tucked it under a corner of Danny's dinosaur book that Jake always read to him before bedtime, somewhere Jake would definitely notice but Vincent's people wouldn't think to look. Danny, grab your backpack and put Mr. Rory inside, I whispered, referring to his stuffed dinosaur. We're going on our adventure now. As quietly as possible, I gathered essentials, my wallet, car keys, Danny's inhaler, and my phone. Then I remembered something crucial. I powered off my phone and removed the battery. If Vincent's people had been tracking our conversations, they might also be tracking our location through GPS. Jake's footsteps were on the stairs now. I heard him pause outside our bedroom door, probably listening to see if we were awake. Through here, I whispered to Danny, guiding him toward the hallway that led to the basement stairs. We made it halfway before I heard Jake's voice behind us. Emma? What are you doing? I turned to face my husband, pressing a finger to my lips and pointing toward the fake Mrs. Henderson's house. Jake's eyes followed my gesture, and I watched understanding dawn on his face as he saw the too tall figure moving around in her kitchen. How long? He mouthed silently. I held up one finger, then pointed to my wrist. 1 hour. Jake's face went pale, but he nodded and gestured toward the basement. He understood we needed to get Danny out immediately. The 3 of us crept down to the basement, where the egress window offered our only chance at escape. But as I started to open it, my blood turned to ice. Standing in Mrs. Patterson's garden shed, partially concealed but clearly visible from this angle, was a man in a dark jacket speaking into a radio. He was positioned with a perfect view of our basement window. Vincent had thought of everything. Daddy, Danny whispered, why is that man hiding in Mrs. Patterson's shed? Jake moved to the window and his shoulders sagged as he saw our escape route was compromised. We were completely trapped. That's when my phone, despite having the battery removed, somehow began to ring. The impossible sound of my phone ringing despite having no battery made my skin crawl. Jake stared at the device in horror as I fumbled to answer it, my hands shaking. Impressive little trick, isn't it? Vincent's voice came through crystal clear. Emma, did you really think removing the battery would stop me from reaching you? I've had your phone cloned since Sunday night. Every call, every text, every voice memo, I have access to everything. My voice memo app. The 47-minute recording of last night's family dinner. If Vincent had access to my phone remotely, then he had. That's right, Vincent continued, as if reading my thoughts. Your little recording session gave me everything I needed to know about Detective Morrison's investigation. In fact, I'm looking at the transcript right now. Very thorough documentation, Emma. You should consider a career in law enforcement. Oh wait, that's exactly what we're here to discuss. Jake grabbed my wrist, his eyes wide with panic. Through the basement window, we could see the man in Mrs. Patterson's shed speaking into his radio again, probably reporting our location to Vincent. The warehouse meeting is off, Vincent said. Too many federal agents crawling around that area after Detective Morrison's unfortunate accident this morning. Instead, we're going to have a much more intimate conversation. Look out your front window in exactly 30 seconds. Vincent, please. 30 seconds, Emma. Front window. And bring Danny with you. I want him to see what cooperation looks like. The line went dead. Jake was already moving toward the stairs, but I caught his arm. We can't take Danny up there, I hissed. Whatever Vincent's planning. If we don't show, he'll send his people inside, Jake whispered back. At least upstairs, we can control the situation better. Danny looked between us with growing fear. Mommy, I don't want to play this game anymore. The man in the shed is scary. We had no choice. The three of us climbed back upstairs, and I carried Danny to the living room window. What I saw in the street made my blood freeze. Parked directly in front of our house was a white ambulance, its lights flashing but no siren. Two paramedics in full uniforms were unloading a stretcher from the back, moving with practiced efficiency. Oh God, Jake breathed. He's going to make it look like a medical emergency. My phone rang again through the cloned device. Beautiful, isn't it? Vincent's voice carried sick satisfaction. Mrs. Rodriguez, I'm sorry to inform you that your son Danny has suffered a severe asthma attack. The paramedics are here to transport him to St. Mary's Hospital for emergency treatment. Very tragic, sometimes these childhood medical episodes can take unexpected turns. You bastard, I whispered, clutching Danny closer. He's not even having an attack. Yet. But children are so fragile, Emma. Their little airways can close up so quickly when they're stressed or frightened. And my paramedics, both highly trained professionals, I assure you, they know exactly how to handle delicate situations involving uncooperative patients. Through the window, I watched the fake paramedics approach our front door. One carried a medical bag that probably contained sedatives. The other had restraints tucked discreetly under the stretcher sheets. Here's what's going to happen, Vincent continued. You're going to open the front door and calmly explain to the paramedics that Danny has been having breathing difficulties. They'll examine him, very thoroughly, and determine that immediate hospitalization is necessary. You'll ride in the ambulance with your son, and we'll have our conversation at a much more private location. And if I refuse? Then the paramedics will have to subdue a hysterical mother who's preventing them from treating her critically ill child. Unfortunately, in the struggle, someone might accidentally administer too much sedative to the little boy. Danny looked up at me with complete trust. Mommy, my breathing is fine. Why does the man say I'm sick? The paramedics were at our front door now, knocking with professional authority. Emergency medical services. We received a call about a child in respiratory distress. Jake moved toward the door, but I grabbed his arm. Don't. Once we let them inside. Emma, Vincent's voice carried deadly patience, you have 10 seconds to open that door voluntarily. After that, my people will interpret your delay as a medical emergency requiring immediate forced entry. Windows, doors, whatever it takes to reach the patient. I looked around desperately. The basement exit was blocked. The front door meant walking straight into Vincent's trap. The back door faced Mrs. Henderson's house, where more of his people were waiting. But then I remembered something Danny had asked about earlier, all the cars outside. Danny, I whispered urgently, remember when you said there were lots of cars outside? Can you count them for Mommy? My brilliant little boy pressed his face to the window. 1, 2, 3. Mommy, there are 9 cars now. That's more than family dinner. 9 vehicles meant Vincent had at least 20 people surrounding our house. This wasn't just about forcing me to cooperate, this was about eliminating everyone who could testify against his operation. Time's up, Vincent said, just as I heard the sound of our front door being kicked in. The front door splintered off its hinges with a sound like thunder. Danny screamed and buried his face against my shoulder as 2 men in paramedic uniforms rushed into our living room, followed by Vincent Castellano himself. He was smaller than I'd imagined, maybe 5'8", wearing an expensive charcoal suit that made him look more like a banker than a monster. But his eyes were cold as winter, and when he smiled at Danny, my son started shaking. There's the patient, Vincent said softly. Danny, my name is Mr. Vincent. I'm here to help make sure you can breathe better. I can breathe fine. Danny's voice was muffled against my neck, but defiant. One of the fake paramedics, a heavy-set man with calloused hands, opened his medical bag and pulled out a small oxygen mask. Ma'am, we need to examine the child immediately. Please place him on the couch. No. I backed toward the staircase, keeping Danny in my arms. You're not touching my son. Vincent sked disapprovingly. Emma, you're making this so much harder than it needs to be. All I want is a simple conversation about your employment opportunities. But if you insist on being difficult. He nodded to the second paramedic, who moved to block the stairway behind us. We were trapped between Vincent and his men, with no escape route left. That's when Jake did something that shocked everyone in the room. "Vincent," he said, stepping between us and the fake paramedics. "Take me instead." Vincent raised an eyebrow. "I'm sorry? You want leverage over Emma? You want someone who knows about the Riverside operation and can identify federal agents?" Jake's voice was steadier than I'd heard it in days. "I'm more valuable to you alive than Danny is as a hostage. Take me, let Emma and Danny go, and I'll give you everything: bank records, surveillance footage from the casino, names of every undercover agent I photographed." "Daddy, no." Danny reached toward Jake with his free hand. Vincent considered this for a moment, his head tilted like a predator evaluating prey. "Interesting proposal, Jake. But you see, I don't just need information. I need long-term cooperation. And Emma here has skills that are much more specialized than your accounting abilities." He gestured to the fake paramedic with the oxygen mask. "Emma, I've done my research on you. Graduated top of your nursing class, specialized in trauma care, currently working emergency rotation at General Hospital. Do you know how rare it is to find someone with your exact qualifications who also has the proper motivation to work without asking inconvenient questions? What are you talking about? 3 months ago, a business associate of mine was shot during a disagreement with a rival organization. Instead of risking a hospital visit where doctors would be required to report the gunshot wound, we handled the medical care privately. Unfortunately, our previous healthcare provider made some errors in judgment and had to be permanently replaced." The implications of his words hit me like a sledgehammer. Vincent wasn't just running money laundering operations, he needed a trauma nurse to treat gunshot wounds and other injuries that couldn't be reported to authorities. "You want me to be your personal ER," I said flatly. "I want you to provide discreet medical services for my organization. Gunshot wounds, overdoses, injuries sustained during business negotiations, nothing you haven't handled before in your hospital work, just with better pay and more flexible reporting requirements." Danny was getting heavier in my arms, and I realized the fake paramedic had been slowly releasing something from a small canister near his medical bag. A sedative gas that was making my son drowsy. "What did you do to him?" I demanded, backing further away. "Just a mild relaxant to help with his anxiety," Vincent said casually. "Danny will be perfectly fine, Emma. In fact, he'll be much safer once you accept your new position. Children of my employees receive excellent protection, private schools, bodyguards, the finest medical care money can buy." Jake stepped closer to Vincent, desperation clear in his voice. "How much money are we talking about? Emma's debt forgiveness, plus salary? Your $94,000 debt disappears completely. Emma receives $50,000 per month, tax-free, plus full medical and dental coverage for the family." Vincent's smile widened. "It's quite generous, really. Most people in your situation don't get to negotiate terms. $50,000 per month. $600,000 per year to patch up criminals and keep my mouth shut about what I saw. It was more money than I'd ever imagined making, and all I had to do was compromise every ethical principle I'd sworn to uphold as a nurse." "And if I refuse?" Vincent nodded to the paramedic near the stairway, who pulled out a syringe filled with clear liquid. "Then Danny's breathing problems become very real, very quickly. Respiratory failure is such a tragedy in young children. Even with immediate medical attention, sometimes there's nothing that can be done." Danny's head was lolling against my shoulder now, his breathing becoming shallow from whatever they'd released into the air. I had maybe minutes before the sedative rendered him unconscious and completely vulnerable. "I need time to think," I said desperately. "You have 30 seconds, Vincent replied, checking his expensive watch. "After that, my associates will assume you've chosen the difficult path, and we'll proceed accordingly." "Wait," I said, my mind racing as I felt Danny growing heavier in my arms. "If you've been planning this for months, if you know about Detective Morrison's investigation and you have cops on your payroll, then you already know the feds are moving tonight regardless of what I do." Vincent's smile faltered slightly. "What's your point, Emma?" "My point is that you're not here because you need a trauma nurse. You're here because your entire operation is about to collapse, and you need hostages." I shifted Danny's weight, trying to keep him awake despite the sedative. "The feds didn't just have wiretaps on your phones, Vincent. They had surveillance on every property you own, including this street." Jake was staring at me like I'd lost my mind, but I pressed on. "You know what I think? I think Detective Morrison isn't in federal custody or dead. I think he's sitting in a surveillance van 2 blocks away, waiting for you to incriminate yourself on federal charges in front of witnesses." Vincent's expression turned dangerous. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Then why haven't you killed us already? Why the elaborate charade with fake paramedics and job offers?" I took a shaky breath. "Because you need us alive and cooperative when the FBI raids this house in the next 10 minutes. The fake paramedic with the syringe glanced nervously at Vincent, who was now looking genuinely unsettled for the first time since he'd walked through our door. "If the feds were coming, they'd be here already," Vincent said, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "Unless they're waiting for you to commit kidnapping and attempted murder in front of multiple witnesses," I shot back. "Vincent, you've been so focused on staying ahead of Detective Morrison's investigation that you walked straight into a federal trap." That's when we heard it, the distant sound of helicopters approaching from the north. Vincent's face went completely white. The fake paramedics exchanged panicked glances, and the one with the syringe took a step toward the shattered front door. "Nobody moves," Vincent snapped, pulling a pistol from inside his suit jacket. "Emma, if you're lying, Danny dies first." But Danny was stirring in my arms, fighting off the sedative as adrenaline kicked in. "Mommy," he mumbled, "why are there helicopters? Are we on TV?" Through the broken front door, I could see Vincent's surveillance vehicles starting their engines. His entire operation was preparing to scatter, which meant they'd realized the same thing I had. This had been a setup from the beginning. "Jake," I said quietly, "remember what you told Sarah this morning about Vincent having people everywhere? What if Detective Morrison wanted Vincent to think his investigation was compromised?" Jake's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "A false flag operation. Make Vincent think he was ahead of the game so he'd get overconfident and make mistakes. Like threatening a federal witness and her child in a house that's been under FBI surveillance for weeks," I finished. The helicopters were getting closer now, and through the window I could see black SUVs turning onto our street from both directions. Vincent's escape routes were being systematically cut off. You smart little bitch, Vincent snarled, raising his weapon toward Danny and me. If I'm going down, I'm taking your family with me. But before he could pull the trigger, the fake paramedic near the stairs tackled him from behind, shouting, FBI. Vincent Castellano, you're under arrest. The man who'd been holding a syringe full of poison was actually an undercover federal agent, and our living room exploded into chaos as more agents poured through every entrance to our house. The federal agents swarmed our living room like a coordinated wave, their tactical gear and weapons drawn. Vincent struggled against the undercover agent who had tackled him, his expensive suit jacket tearing as they wrestled for control of his pistol. Danny Rodriguez, get down. Agent Sarah Kim, who I now realized wasn't one of Vincent's corrupt cops but an undercover federal agent, grabbed my son and me, pulling us behind the overturned couch as gunshots erupted. The second fake paramedic had drawn his own weapon, but 3 more agents were already through the back door, shouting commands that echoed through our destroyed living room. Drop your weapons. FBI. Vincent's gun clattered across our hardwood floor as Agent Kim, the real Agent Kim, zip-tied his hands behind his back. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead, and his banker-calm demeanor had completely shattered. Vincent Castellano, you're under arrest for racketeering, extortion, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping, Agent Kim announced, hauling him to his feet. You have the right to remain silent. Through our shattered front door, I could see Vincent's entire surveillance network being systematically dismantled. His 9 vehicles were surrounded by federal agents, and men in handcuffs were being loaded into transport vans. Officer Chen from a local precinct was among them, his police uniform replaced by an orange jumpsuit. Mrs. Rodriguez? A familiar voice made me look up. Detective Bill Morrison stepped through the chaos, his badge hanging from his neck and a tactical vest over his civilian clothes. Are you and Danny injured? Detective Morrison, I breathed, relief flooding through me. But the phone call this morning, Vincent said you were dead? In custody? Morrison smiled grimly. Vincent was fed exactly the information we wanted him to believe. When we discovered Jake had been photographing our surveillance equipment at Riverside Casino, we realized Vincent was getting intelligence from inside our investigation. Jake stepped forward, his face pale. So you used me as bait. We used your gambling debt as the perfect cover for a long-term undercover operation, Morrison corrected. Agent Kim has been posing as a corrupt financial crimes detective for 8 months, feeding Vincent false information about our investigation timeline while gathering evidence about his police contacts. Danny stood in my arms, the sedative finally wearing off. Mommy, why are there so many people with guns in our house? Because the bad men are going away now, sweetheart, I whispered, kissing his forehead. The police caught them. Agent Kim approached us, holstering her weapon. Mrs. Rodriguez, I need to apologize for putting your family through this ordeal. But your recording from last night provided the final pieces we needed. Vincent's confession about the Riverside money laundering operation, Jake's testimony about photographing federal agents, and the threats against Danny, we have enough evidence to dismantle his entire network. What happens now? I asked, looking around our destroyed home. Vincent Castellano is facing federal charges that will put him away for the rest of his life, Morrison explained. His corrupt police contacts are being arrested simultaneously across the city. The Riverside casino operation is being shut down, and all the money laundering accounts Jake helped create are being frozen and traced. Jake stepped closer, his voice barely audible. Detective Morrison, about my cooperation. The district attorney has agreed to your plea deal. Community service, financial restitution, mandatory gambling addiction treatment, and full cooperation with ongoing federal investigations. No jail time. Morrison's expression softened slightly. Jake, you made terrible choices, but you also helped us catch a monster who was threatening your family. That counts for something. Through the window, I watched Vincent being loaded into a federal transport vehicle. For a brief moment, his cold eyes met mine through the bulletproof glass. But instead of the predatory menace I'd seen an hour ago, I saw something else, defeat. Complete, absolute defeat. It's over, I whispered to Danny, who was now fully awake and watching the controlled chaos around us with wide eyes. Mommy, he said seriously, pointing at the FBI agents securing evidence throughout our house, these police are much better than the other ones. Despite everything, our destroyed home, our shattered marriage, the trauma of the past week, I found myself laughing. My brilliant, innocent 2-year-old had just delivered the most accurate assessment of our situation possible. Vincent Castellano's reign of terror was over. Danny was safe. And for the first time in months, our future was ours to decide.